Okay. Lisa, welcome to the Girl Out of Order podcast.
Thank you for having me on, Christine. I am delighted to have more time with you since you just came on my show, All Things Therapy, earlier in the week.
I know and we were just discussing before we even came on how nice it is to do the podcast host guest thing so close together so we can build on our momentum.
100%.
I love that. All right, Lisa. Well, I've already told our listeners a little bit about your background. I mean, it took 5 minutes to tell all the amazing things you're doing. Okay, I'm exaggerating. I'm exaggerating, but you've done so much. You have such an interesting background. But just to start, as our listeners are getting familiar with you, just tell us, like, who is Lisa Tahir? How would you introduce yourself to our community?
I love your question, and I feel like I can tell you the truth on your show since you are so authentic. I really believe that I am pure positive energy, and the
Ooh.
things that I do are really an outgrowth of wanting to be that in this world. And I know, much like you, wanting to add value to people's lives, because I wish I had I wish I had the version of me that I am when I was younger, because there was a lot of struggle there. There was a lot of hardship growing up in a house where there was abuse and trauma, and I
Mhm.
didn't love myself. I didn't know that I didn't, but my self-esteem was really low. And I often felt depressed for a lot of my younger years and didn't feel worthy or even worth living for a long, long, long time. And I know how disempowering and how too many people live like that. So I just, now that I know that I'm worthy, that we're all worthy, that we all have gifts, that whatever it is, there is something that you offer that's really uniquely yours. Even though other people might do it, you have your own spin and twist. And it just makes me really want to live by sharing that.
Oh, there's so much gorgeousness there to unpack. Oh, it's exciting. Okay. So, first and foremost, my beautiful sister, I am throwing my virtual arms around you.
Thank you.
We didn't even talk about our childhoods when we were
No.
just when we were talking, but we have very similar past. It sounds
Mhm.
like we've both been through some difficult upbringings that led us to have these disempowering stories running through our heads, whether it be at the forefront or, running in the background. Like, you open up your computer and you're stunned at how many programs are running in the background, right? We don't know how
Yes.
many, but it sounds like we share that similarity there. And to flip that, because you've done so much work on yourself and you've done so much work pouring into others, it sounds to me like you've now flipped that script. Like life had a script for you, and you basically said, not today, Satan. I'm going to make something of myself,
Exactly.
but I'm going to
Yes.
go further. And I love what you said, that you embody this positivity.
Yeah.
And how do you carry that into your professional life?
Every day I start with just getting up and in my morning meditation, which sometimes might be just a couple of minutes and other times might be 30 minutes, saying thank you and really feeling appreciative. I actually find things that I'm truly love about. And like, I love a new day starting and just eager anticipation about what will unfold and asking to align my mind with the universal mind and my subconscious
Mhm.
mind with the universal mind. There's power in our language, in our words, and really just wanting to align the inside of me with this universal power that I've come to learn about, that though we can't see it with our eyes, it exists, it vibrates, it wants to join and help us. And I just open myself to be a channel of that. And then I'll get to work, opening my emails and seeing people and going to the grocery and just trying to be kind. And I was thinking the other day, even Christine, there's a difference between being nice and being kind. And I never knew that difference until more recently. Niceness for me often would be compromising some of my own boundaries to be
Oh,
nice versus being kind. I feel like there's authenticity there because being kind sometimes might look like excusing yourself from a conversation or cutting it short. And like, does that make sense to you? And I don't know why this is
yeah.
coming up, I didn't plan it, but the difference between
No,
being
we don't plan
nice,
these things here
kind.
on Girl Out of
Yeah.
Order. We don't plan things. We just go
Yeah.
where the spirit leads us. So that's
Yeah.
fine. Can I ask you a distinction?
Hmm.
So what I'm hearing you say is that being nice can lead us to contort ourselves, right? To fit other
Yes,
people's molds, which we don't do here at Girl Out of Order. Whereas
exactly.
being kind is an outpouring of your authentic nature to bless others, to be in good relationship. I'm kind of bumbling through the explanation, but maybe you
You
can help me
got this.
flesh that out.
Yes,
Is that
that's
sort of
it.
where you're going with
So
that?
exactly, exactly. And I am thinking this needs to be shared between us on this show right now because I've been thinking of that a lot. And exactly,
Mm.
I'm exactly aligned with what you're saying around kindness is from our authenticity and from our overfill versus I think being nice is often from depletion. When I look at my own life,
Ah.
I was nice because I should, all these things. I'm a woman. I'm supposed to care. I'm supposed to blah, 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 but I might be totally depleted and being fake
Mm.
about it, doing it
Mhm.
because I should instead of because I want to. And I think kindness can really come from a want to versus a should.
I love that. And as we were getting ready to come on air too, we were talking about like just commanding our subconscious mind to share whatever the people listening need to hear. So it's beautiful that you went there. And it's also super congruent with what I've been sharing lately in my Girl Out of Order Facebook community and on this podcast when we're talking about self-confidence versus self-worth, right? Self-worth is intrinsic value because we just simply are. Whereas
Yes.
self-confidence is really based upon what we do, our successes or our lack thereof can determine
Yeah.
that. But what you said there in relation to that is so important because when we are nice, as you say, we're just doing things because we should, right? And
Yes.
Tony Robbins has a phrase all the times. He said, "You got to stop shooting all over yourself," which
Absolutely.
always cracks me up because it's a great visual, but it's also so true. When women so often we do the things we think we should, and we never stop to ask, or rarely stop to ask ourselves, is that truly what I want? Is that
Mm-hmm.
really congruent with my values? Is that going to trigger my trauma? And we don't ask
Right.
those questions. We just kind of zombie through life. And that I love that distinction between being nice and being kind. So how does being kind show up? Give me an example of how that shows up in your life
Well, I'm
and in your
thinking,
practice.
sure. I'm thinking as you're even sharing that, when I've looked at the differences when I'm nice versus being kind, sometime what's kind is often I'll ask what's kind for you, Lisa, and sometimes what comes up might be really hard because it means that a certain a friend group or activity, maybe I need to take a little time away, maybe I need to
Mhm.
do some things, show up in some ways that are like, eek, like, do I have to do that? And yet
Mhm.
in doing that, it brings happiness to say and specifics could be overscheduling. I used to really
Mhm.
overschedule myself. And it was
Mhm.
from a genuine yes. Like my yeses were like, of course I want to do that. Yet the week comes and there's so many things I said yes to. And I hadn't really thought about what might I need mentally that week and emotionally
Mhm.
to refuel myself, to meditate, to read, to just let myself watch a show even instead of committing to so many things. So I've learned to say, hey, that sounds great, but let me get back to you. And that gives you a buffer of time. That's given me a buffer of time to really discern if something is going to work versus will it be just more overscheduling and depleting oneself that oftentimes people don't know because women were so good at hiding how we feel. And
Right.
because I think we really push ourselves. And that's where, for me, self forgiveness comes in. I think as women, we have a lot to forgive ourselves for. And first and foremost, I think that often centers around perfectionism and
Mhm.
overachievement and feeling like this is what we have to do to be valuable, to be a good wife, mother, partner, employee, friend.
Mhm. Mhm.
What do you think about that?
Oh, there's so much there. You are just like a fountain of wisdom. I'm like, where do I start? Going back to the overscheduling piece, if I could start there.
Yeah.
So the overscheduling piece, I had four daughters. I have four daughters. I didn't had.
Yes,
I have four
you
daughters
do. You
and
do.
still do. But I mean, I had six, four, two, and brand new. So like my life was scheduled by their schedules for
Yeah.
so many years. And what I think happens for so many of us women is we operate in the tyranny of the urgent, right?
Mm,
And
mm-hmm.
we're meeting all the needs of all the people. And some of that is necessary for a time, especially when
Of
you've got a
course.
lot of littles. But even for those women listening that have littles, you will be a much more fulfilled mama if you carve out time for you. And I love what you said about the power of the pause. In fact, you probably just gave me another podcast episode. So listen up,
Yes.
listeners, it's coming, the power of the pause. But truly, we go so headlong into our days. We go so headlong into our weeks, sometimes our years. Just go, go, go. And I mean, I hand make my schedules, my calendars at home. My
I
daughters
do
love.
too.
I use
Yeah.
stickers. I mean, I
That's awesome.
creativity. But when you start putting all of the stuff in there it you just kind of look at it and go, oh my gosh, just to survive, I have to do all the things. And then where do we fit in? So what I would say, and back to the self-forgiveness piece, and I will answer your question eventually,
Yeah. Yeah. This is
is,
great.
I'm sitting here as a 52-year-old woman with three adult children and a 16-year-old. And there's been times when I have a lot of regrets. Like I
Mm,
wish I could go back and be that woman who I hope I'm speaking to that did carve out those times for herself and did
yeah.
prioritize her needs so that she could be a better example for her daughters. So there is an element of forgiving myself
Yes.
for not doing better, for not being better, for not loving myself
For not
well
knowing
enough.
that you needed that.
Correct. Correct.
And now you do.
Yes, absolutely. And as we go into, the next state phase of life, which hopefully if I had four kids and I don't get a ton of grandkids, we're gonna have some problems here. I was thinking about that actually, I don't know, was it this morning? But I was literally just thinking about that, about how it's so interesting that you brought this up because I was thinking, like, man, I wish so badly I knew even a fraction of what I know now. I wish I'd been in the Tony Robbins world then. I would have
Mm-hmm.
known so much more. And then I thought, I get a second act. It's never too late to forgive
Yeah,
myself, and it's
exactly.
never too late to pour into my daughters and help
Right.
them
Oh
do
my gosh.
better,
Yes.
right?
At younger ages than you were.
Oh,
Such a gift.
absolutely. It is such a gift. So self-compassion or self-compassion too, but self-forgiveness as well. So
Absolutely.
tell me a little bit about the focus of your practice because you're a practicing therapist,
I
correct?
am. I am. I'm a licensed clinical social worker in California and Louisiana. I divide my time between Los Angeles and New Orleans, and I've done that for 9 years now because
Wow.
I love both cities. That's my why, so it compels me to keep doing that. And I love working with people, Christine, to help them understand who they really are and what drives them, what motivates
Mm,
them, because sometimes I think they're deeper awarenesses yet to be acknowledged that can help you understand
yeah.
yourself beyond what you feel like you have to do. Like, what do
Mhm.
you really want to do? And how might you start living that in some small ways each day and feeling happiness and joy, being more authentic? Yeah, I love really helping people with that self-discovery and personal
Mhm.
growth piece.
Do you focus, is your practice, and this is just for my education purposes, your practice focused more on like identity or is it more trauma focused or is it a little bit of both?
It's been both. For a lot of years, I specialized in childhood trauma, sexual abuse, domestic violence, physical abuse, and only focusing on those issues, I got really depressed, to be honest. Like
Oh,
only focused upon that
mm,
deep trauma work. I felt like I needed to kind of lift myself out of
mm,
that a bit, and of course that comes up with clients because it's reported that 1 in 4 women have
mm,
experienced sexual abuse by age 18, and I think 1 in 6 men, and that's just what's reported. So certainly issues of trauma come up in my work with people and healing from emotional wounds so they can actually start living as they really want to be, and
mm.
not by feeling so unworthy and depressed like I did when I was younger and had to unravel kind of my trauma pieces to heal those parts of me so I
Mm,
could really
mm.
know my value and worth. And
Oh
so
my
that
gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me dive in,
Yeah.
may I?
Please.
I
Yeah,
feel like you
please.
just filled up a giant pool and I'm
Yeah.
like diving
Let's
in.
do it.
Like
Let's do it.
diving in because there's so much goodness there. There's so many nuggets that I know will help a woman out there because you and I are in very similar
Mm-hmm.
type of work, right? Doing
Yes.
as I do, we talked about that on your podcast as a family
Yes.
law attorney. I mean, I've had women come in with black eyes and broken
Oh,
arms and
oh,
being
yeah.
violated
Like
with
the,
adultery and so many stories and history of abuse. And as a survivor of abuse, as you are,
yes.
I don't know, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like we're drawn to help women like that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I think we have a
And
natural gift and propensity to.
correct. And yet what I want our listeners to hear is it's beautiful to serve in that manner. And we have to stay connected to our own awareness around our trauma. And sometimes we may need to pull back
Yes.
from what we might be naturally gifted to do
Yes.
to protect our beautiful selves. Would you say
Yeah.
that's true?
100%.
Oh, I was just hearing you say that. I was like, oh, I just wish we were sitting next to each other on the couch so we could just have a good old hug and cry about it. Because it's
Yes.
hard. It's heavy to carry that load, even though you know you're serving, right?
And you know what's yes, yes, and what's changed for me, Christine, is back then I didn't have the awareness. I didn't meditate like I do. I didn't
Mhm.
consciously use spirituality. But when I look back, I was always tapping into it. But I used to think I was carrying all that. And when I realized I don't have to carry that, it's not my weight, turn it
Right,
over to the
right.
universe, this energy again that so
Hmm.
now it doesn't feel heavy like it used to because I'm not absorbing that. The universe is whatever someone's story
Wow.
is, whatever those memories are and experiences. I feel like it's now going into this unconditional love energy
Mm.
and not into me. So I didn't have that awareness back then like I do today.
I love that. And are you familiar with Michael Singer's work?
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
whoo, that man. Sometimes he's talking, I don't know what the hell he's talking about, I'll be honest. I have to rewind a couple times, but one of the things that he has said, and I'm sure I'm butchering it, so give me lots of grace here, is that when we have a thought or we have an emotion, and it needs to pass through, right? It
Hmm.
needs to pass through our bodies and our spirits. And it's when we hold on to it, when it hits these blockages in us, that it starts to lodge in us. So, what
Right.
I'm hearing you say is very similar to what I've been doing in my personal growth journey. I am learning to allow the material that I have to deal with, or excuse me, the material that I get to deal with when I'm helping
Yes.
clients. I'm learning how to let it pass through. There aren't those blockages in me because I'm
Yeah.
not holding on to my own trauma. These clients aren't a mirror for my own experience anymore. And as such, I'm more mentally and emotionally healthy when I serve them. I don't know if that's similar to what you've been experiencing, or am
It
I
is.
telling
Yes.
my
And
own story here?
absolutely, yes. And in addition, when something does strike me, when I do feel a discordant emotion, and I imagine it like when something like pricks me, like I think of
Mhm.
how water rolls off the back of a duck, and if something didn't, it's like there's like something. I'm really grateful and thankful because that's revealing to me an area for me
Ah,
to draw my attention to with curiosity, not judgment. Like,
mhm,
hey, Lisa, and later on after the session that night, what was going on? What came up for you? And really look at what that is so then I can apply that healing and that
mm,
forgiveness, that grace, that understanding because sometimes people do bring up, even if you're not a healing professional, people bring up things within you, and we call it triggers, which I call in my book a trigger is an unhealed energetic attachment that you don't know is there until it comes up. And instead of being
mm,
so critical and judgmental and angry about it, if you're just curious instead, it's going to change your whole experience dealing
mm.
with triggers within you and with a partner, with a friend, to be curious instead of so critical. I think that's a major
Yeah.
shift to make. That's helpful.
I love that. Okay, so I want to repeat that because that's a mic drop moment. We need to be curious instead of critical. And
Yeah.
it's so interesting that you bring this up. I swear it's like the universe has aligned us because
Yes.
you're like dropping all these things I've been sharing with my community, because one of the things I've shared recently on a live in my Facebook community is we need to approach life with curiosity. We need to
Mm-hmm.
approach life with inquiry. And when we do that, when we get curious about situations, about our emotions, about our, the state that we're in, instead of just judging ourselves, instead of like assuming things are a certain way, we ask questions.
Yes.
And
It can be so helpful.
absolutely. And it's the power of the questions that often dictate the beauty of the answers, don't you think?
Absolutely, yes. And this can happen, I think, really frequently. For me, just in the last 2 weeks, one of my sisters text something to our group, our sibling group text, and it
Hmm.
was so off. And I felt my immediate reaction was to feel offended. And I typed my sister's, when you're reactive instead of responsive, I did go there. And then I caught myself and I privately text my sister and I said, you know what? I just sent a reaction to our group text, but
Mm.
I'm curious, like, are you okay? Because what you said felt so foreign to kind of you, like, are you okay? Like, not being defensive here, like, I'm just want to check in. And it
Yeah.
turns out there was something going on with her and she wasn't totally okay. And it caused her to send that text. It was about something she was going through, not about me. And we were able to quickly sort it by then having a phone conversation about what that was. And so I think when you're curious and if somebody says or does something that pricks your reactiveness, you might want to be curious and ask what's going on here because it could keep it from escalating.
I love that. And then when you had me on your podcast, we were talking about what we're doing on my podcast in February. We're doing Female Friendship February.
Yes, yes,
And I just when you said that, and because having four girls, you have sisters, there's friendship there, and it takes
yeah,
work. And that the power of curiosity, the power of inquiry,
yes,
it opens up the floodgates of connection, don't you think?
right. And possibilities.
Yes, and possibilities. So when we ask questions of our partners or our coworkers or our sisters or our friends, instead of just assuming and barreling in, which as an attorney, we barrel in like,
Right.
like it's our job because, well, that's just what we do. And it's
Yes,
not effective in relationships. It might be effective
right.
in the courtroom, but in
Yes.
relationships, it's really about inquiry and connections.
Yeah,
Love that.
absolutely.
I
Thank
love
you.
that. Yes,
My
thank you.
my kitty cat wants to say hi. I think you can see Smelly.
I know. I was
She
just kind of smiling at you. You're watching
she
this on YouTube. I'm just enjoying this
yes.
chat.
She loves being on Zoom video. So this is Smelly Cat for all of you watching.
Smelly cat. Okay, you're a
Smelly
friend.
Cat.
You're obviously a Friends fan.
Yes, the SPCA named her that when they found her because she was smelling badly, being abandoned in a dumpster as a
Oh,
little baby.
well, she looks amazing now. That's
Thank
awesome.
you. Thank you.
All right, well, let's switch gears a little bit. I wanted
Yeah.
to talk about your podcast because
Okay.
I was on your podcast and just like I told you when before we got on here, I was scrolling through looking for those solo episodes, and you're like an amazing interviewer.
Thank
And so
you.
tell me, you've had your podcast for how long?
It will be since 2016, so 8 years
Wow.
in March of 2024 and almost 400 episodes.
That is amazing. What led you asked me this on your podcast? So
Yeah,
what led you to start this podcast? I mean, you have I'm assuming a full-time practice.
I
Why
do.
would you
Yes.
why would you start this podcast?
So Christine, I had never thought about being a podcaster in my whole life until I went to Los Angeles in 2014 and a lot of my friends there that I made had podcasts, they had shows, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, how do you do that?" And like a part of me was so excited and interested, and then when a friend said, "Why don't you do it?" A bigger part of me was like, "Oh no, I can't do that." Like that. Yeah, exactly. No, 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 that's not for me. But yet there was this deep curiosity and interest. And that's how I learned the things we want are usually mixed with this, oh my God, what is that? How do I do it? And also some anxiety and some fear. And when they're paired and when there's more desire than fear, I would say move with it because the other side of the coin of anxiety is actually excitement, and the two release the same chemicals in our brains that you and I spoke about that can feel
Mhm.
confusing to us. So I was curious, I was excited and nervous, and I just started researching. I started my podcast on LA Talk Radio, and that was great for
Huh.
me because they did all the recording, and I just would show up to the studio and have content written out, and we would call my guests. So I feel like that was good baby stepping for
Yeah.
me to have them guide me and help me. And I fell in love with having these conversations and getting to meet people like you. We wouldn't be talking otherwise. We wouldn't know each other if we didn't have podcasts to connect. So it's open
Right.
community for me, which I love, and connecting with people, doing things, living things, teaching things that I love. And it's just helped my life grow immensely.
Wow, 8 years. I told you that I admire you so much, and I'm going to learn from you. I'm going to keep asking you questions. Just warning.
Yeah, you got it. You got it.
Warning. As a newer podcaster, like it's really neat to see somebody who's been doing this for such a long time. You clearly have a passion for this.
I do. And I want to learn from you about being more comfortable doing solo shows that you do so naturally. And I shared with
Aw.
you, I have anxiety about just speaking without there being a person to bounce it off of. So I'm working on that. I'm doing more of those to help me learn and have the confidence that I can do that.
Well, I can tell you just from what we've already talked about today that there is so much gold there inside Lisa, and the world needs to hear more from you. So I hope you
Thank
will
you.
get brave and do some more solo episodes for sure. So
Yes.
what is so it's all things therapy. That's kind of a broad category. What is your passion? What's the mission behind your podcast?
The mission is to change consciousness one conversation at a time. And that
Mm,
came to me when I started my show in 2014. It's the tagline because I believe this that we are doing, it's changing consciousness, it's changing awareness, it's changing the women that are listening, and this resonates. It's opening up their consciousness, their
mm,
awareness, their ideas of what's possible for them. And uniquely, the universe uniquely is with each of you, each of us. And once
right.
when we expose ourselves to thought that like germinates and grows, it's really healthy thought that has a life force unto itself. And so that's what I really love about podcasting and these
So
conversations.
changing consciousness one conversation at a time. Okay. So speak to me like I'm a kindergartner. Just
Okay.
define consciousness. Like, what do you mean by that? Because I think I understand,
Yeah.
but you break that down.
I define consciousness as awareness. Consciousness is our awareness. And when you think of awareness, it's all of our senses physically, and it's also our spidey senses. It's our intuition, it's our remembrance of things where we might not know where we learn that, but we feel it. It could be from, if you believe in past lives or other timelines. I believe in concurrent lives. The more I read, for
Mhm,
instead of past, present, and future, we need that as human beings to define and create our days and our lives and organize things. But the universe,
mhm.
time, it's not past, present, and future. It's all in the now. And so it's the awareness that you have now. That's your consciousness. So it's just kind of a fancy word for awareness.
Yeah, well, I used to read the book Fancy Nancy to my daughters when they were little, and
Okay.
it's this cute little series where she would use a big word, and she'd say, "Well, that's just fancy for such and such." So
Yes.
consciousness
Yes.
is just fancy for awareness. So
It
I
is.
appreciate that. Thank you for that explanation.
You're welcome.
Okay, so you and I, we had talked a little bit about what you wanted to share with our listeners. And you brought up a concept that is near and dear to my heart, not just as an attorney, as a mom, but as just a woman who on her own personal growth journey. And that's the issue of personal responsibility for our healing.
Yes.
Tell me
Yes.
a little bit about that. What does that mean
That
to you?
that was a real game changer for me, Christine, when I've been in therapy and my therapist talked to me. I was in this place of feeling really disempowered and sad about some of the
Mm,
traumatic experiences I went through, and feeling like it was stuck. I was stuck there, like feeling like being victimized because I was victimized. And so she really helped me with that by saying, Lisa, though it wasn't your fault, those things that happen, it's now your responsibility to heal.
mm,
And that's actually a good thing, not a responsibility. Because I even heard it then, it's like, oh, something else for me to do. And she was like, okay, you could look at it like that.
mhm,
Or you could suspend that temporarily and consider that maybe there's some gifts here. Maybe life actually is as awful as it was, like maybe these things are for you to have a story, to have, and it was like the first time I ever
Yeah.
heard that kind of reframing. And
Yeah.
it's like something about it was like, ooh, like I felt happier all of a sudden. Like the shame and the depression, like it like stopped. And I started to feel like, ooh, like tell me more about that. Like something in me like woke up where like that's the path to really take responsibility
Mhm.
for the things for because I wanted to be happy. And she's like, how do you want to feel? I was like, I want to feel happy. I want to feel joyful. I want to feel
Right.
healed and not broken. And she's
Yes.
like, well, what would a person who's happy, what kind of thoughts might they have? What kind of things might they do
Right.
in their day? Like, how might they think about themselves? Like, I know they wouldn't be beating up on themselves, feeling like they're wrong or bad. Like, I imagine they would be affirming themselves, encouraging
Mhm.
themselves. And so that really helped me to start to shift the story. And I believe personal responsibility is such a huge, just life
Yes.
changer.
Oh, oh, you just keep dropping so much fire. Where do I
Yeah.
start? Okay.
Yeah.
So, personal responsibility in general is obviously a very powerful concept, especially if you want to have a highly functioning society, right?
Yeah.
When we want to raise children that take personal responsibility, if you make a mistake, you own it. Like the
Right.
basketball player on the court who raises his or her hand when they foul, like, my bad,
Yeah.
you accept
Yeah.
responsibility, you take the consequences, you grow as a person, and then you move into the next part of your life, hopefully not doing that same thing again.
Yes.
But I love what you said, and I swear you're like almost opening your mouth and speaking Tony Robbins. It's so interesting because
Yeah.
he has another saying that I am really trying to live by and teach my daughters is life is happening for us, not
Yes.
to us. And it's a simple reframe. It's a simple word change. Like if life is happening for you, it doesn't mean that you have to be ecstatic that you lost your job or you got a divorce or somebody hurt you. But there's always good to be found in the journey through whatever you're going through in life. And
Yes.
that's what you're talking about. Personal responsibility is like, I have a responsibility to control what goes on between my ears.
Right.
That's it, right? That's where everything stems, and nobody gets to
Yes.
control my brain. So if I choose to decide that life is happening for me, that these incidents created this person that I am, then I can
Right.
almost welcome the lessons and then more easily move through the forgiveness and the letting go.
Right. Yes. And identifying who you want to be. And that
Yes.
was key for me. Who do I want to be? How do I want to feel? And that it doesn't
Mhm.
necessarily mean identify a job, you're a CEO, but how do you want to feel? It could be that if that really is speaking through you, but how do you want to feel? And for me, it was like, I want to feel happy. I want to feel worthy. I want to feel good enough. That was a
Yes.
big one for me. I just want to feel good
Yes.
enough. And from that place, I
Mhm.
could identify, and so that's how I actually wanted to become a therapist. My therapist helped me so much when I was in my 20s that I went to social work school at Tulane. And it was just such a yes, like this is how I want to spend my life, is helping people change the way they speak to themselves and about
Yes.
themselves so they
Yes.
can really live the lives that they want.
Yes, absolutely. And you hit on something that I've talked about in so many times in this podcast, which is our transformational vocabulary. Watch
Mm,
your TV. What is
yeah,
the transformational vocabulary you're using? You're either using disempowering words or you're using empowering words. There's very few words that are neutral. So
yeah,
how we talk about ourselves, how we talk about our situations, that's why I tweaked some of my language earlier. Like I get to do these things, not I have to do. I mean, it
yes,
it sounds so simplistic, but I also invite my daughters and I invite my listeners and I invite my clients. Why not try it? Like if you
yes,
haven't tried making these small shifts, don't knock it. Give it a try
yes.
because it's amazing when you start creating these new neural pathways. You start opening up channels of healing because you're no longer focusing on what's wrong. You're now looking for what's right.
Absolutely, yes. And I want to share, you might know this book, Christine, but it's to me, I believe, a most important book. And it's a book not only have I read, but I've studied it. I'm in year 3. It's called The Master Key System by Charles
Mm.
Haanel, Haanel. And he was one of the new thought leaders in the 20s like that Neville Goddard came from. I think they might have even been peers. And this book talks about the master key. It's our mind and
Mm,
how our words are our thoughts disguised in clothing. And when you think about even the reason they call it spelling, you're casting spells with your words. And it's gotten me to start to draw my attention to how I speak and what I speak and how that really creates the content of your life, your thoughts first. And there's all these exercises. It's 22 principles, and it really is about how our life emerges from what we believe is true for
mm,
us, our belief system. And our belief system comes from the thoughts that we think. They are
right.
one and the same. And
Yes.
it's really important to learn to value and love yourself so you can have healthy beliefs that yield the things you really want. So you're not having things happen out of the blue. That's actually really more out of your unconscious. Abraham Hicks talks about that, and
Hmm.
really drawing our attention and awareness to what we're believing is true, and putting to rest maybe some of the funny things we'd say or think to ourselves but are disempowering, that are self-deprecating. Don't do that anymore and see what happens. Try it for 30 days. Like you're
Yeah,
saying, Christine, try for 30 days. Life is
there it
happening
is.
for me. Like I'm big into 30-day experiments. Try for 30 days and no one needs to know what you, because it's in your mind, in between your
Right.
ears, and see what happens and let us know.
Oh, do you hear that, listeners? That's a challenge right there. For 30 days, make a small shift in your language, a small shift in how you speak about yourself, about your situation, about your emotions, and you're going to find that there's going to be some major shifts in just your overall feeling. And I love what Lisa said, let us know because we're all about being practical on Girl Out of Order.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I want to start wrapping up our
Yeah.
time by talking about your book. I am going to plead ignorance. I don't understand a
Well,
lot
I'm
of
going to
this.
send it
So
to you. I'll send you a copy.
I
And
would
then,
love that. But
yeah,
if you could just tell us the name of your book, tell us the subtitle, and then give us an explanation of what it is.
sure. My book is called The Chiron Effect: Healing Our Core Wounds Through Astrology, Empathy, and Self Forgiveness. And my book helps you to identify the area of your thinking where you feel vulnerable, you feel unworthy. I
Mhm.
discovered there's 12 core woundings, and that includes vulnerabilities. It's a spectrum. For some of you, this might be a core wounding, like it was for me, having experienced trauma. For others, on the vulnerability side, it might be an ouch. And these are things like a core wounding or vulnerability in your personal value and your self-worth, a core wounding or vulnerability by neglect, abandonment, wounds in your vulnerability in your health and its associated routines, and how you come to understand where your vulnerability is through the placement of Chiron, Chiron, in your
Okay.
astrological birth chart, which is generated. I have a plug-in website where you can enter your birth data and it gives you where Chiron is in Aries and Taurus and Libra. And this is different than your sun sign. And you might be thinking, because I did, okay, you're telling me this is based on my horoscope that someone else wrote. Absolutely not. You wrote your birth chart. We wrote our charts. We wrote our lives, like what we wanted to come here on earth and do and be. And while I certainly don't remember doing all that and creating all that, now that I'm here, I'm seeing the evidence of some of what I wanted to live, and we can tweak it through personal responsibility and
Hmm.
self-forgiveness. I talk about empathy and self-forgiveness to help
Hmm.
heal wounds, people, things that have hurt us, and really loving these part of ourselves that we usually would shame, like feeling like we're not good enough or that we have to keep doing more, more, more to be valuable and loved, performance-based love, like putting all that to rest for those of you that might have Chiron in Aries or Taurus. And it's specific for each. I give takeaway steps, I give affirmations. And so I feel like my book is a unique way to share some things that have already been talked about in different ways, but
Hmm.
really make it practical and user friendly.
I love that. I love that. Well, oh, you are such a beautiful, beautiful mind. You have such
Thank you.
passion to serve. It's so obvious that you've taken your pain and you've created it into your purpose. You've taken your mess
Absolutely.
and you've made it your message. And I
Yeah.
know that's why we just connected so well because we have
Yes.
similar passions. So I
Yeah.
have one final question
Yeah.
for you, and it's full disclosure, I 100% ripped it off from Jen Hatmaker's podcast. This is not
Okay.
original, but it's
Okay.
so beautiful. And she took this from Barbara Brown Taylor, and it's just answer it however you want. You can be funny, you can be serious, but I never tell our guests what it's going to be because I want to hear what you have to say. So if I asked you, what is saving your life right now, what would your answer be?
What comes up is centered around a sense of humor and finding humor. The universe, I think wants us to laugh. And instead of being, I tend to be really serious, Christine, and I've been trying to have more levity, more humor. Like, universe, I want you to knock your socks off to show me, like, and even just laughing more, like laughing at myself, like there's nothing really serious. It doesn't have to be so serious. Things don't have to have so much weight to them. So that's really saving my life, looking at life through a different lens of just like taking it all down. And I'm like, Lisa,
Yeah,
take it, calm the fuck down. Like I'll tell myself, like, calm the fuck down. It's okay.
love
Shit's going
that.
well. Like, so so that's really helping me right now.
I love that. That's such a great answer. Being more playful. I can
Yes.
totally relate. I think we're like two sisters from different misters, I think.
Yes. Yes, we are.
All right. Well, before we wrap up, just tell our listeners where they can find you, where are all the places they can find Lisa Tahir.
Yeah, it's centralized in nolatherapy.com. That stands for New Orleans, Los Angeles Therapy.com. My website, Nola Therapy, on Instagram and on YouTube. And email me, Lisa at nolatherapy.com. And I'd love to offer your community half off a first session on Zoom if they're interested
Oh,
to explore any of these things that we've been talking about. If they just mention you, Christine, the show, I'd love to give that
perfect.
to your community.
Oh, what a beautiful gift. Thank you for that, Lisa.
You're
I'll make sure
welcome.
that link is in the show notes as well as the link to your book. I cannot thank you enough for coming on my podcast and having me on yours. You are a beautiful soul, and now I count
You
you as a friend.
you are. I love you. I feel this resonance. Thank you. I'm glad the universe aligned us and we both listened.
Perfect. Wasn't Lisa amazing? I mean, I literally feel like she's like a big sister to me, and I am so excited that you get to know her. So make sure you go into the show notes so you can find Lisa in all the places. And please do us a favor, share the Girl Out of Order podcast wherever you listen. Please give us a 5-star review and a written review. It would really help us get the message of Girl Out of Order out into the universe where it belongs so we can build our tribe. And speaking of tribes, make sure you join the Girl Out of Order Facebook community because we have so many things going on inside the community and we need what only you can give. We're in this together, sisters. So until next time, make sure you continue to be a girl out of order. I love you and I will see you next time.